All right, I think we're live. So welcome everybody. I'm Alexis. I will be your host of the day. And I have the pleasure to welcome Dominic. Hi, Dom.
Hi.
Good to see you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, cool. So we're gonna just wait a few seconds so everybody can arrive, set up. It's like we're 2 p.m. So people are getting reminded. And in the meantime, let me just do a quick intro. This is our UX talk organized by TestingTime, where we actually interview our clients on their user research practice and how do they solve this. So the theme of the day with Dominic is user research in the financial sector, but also how do they organize the research internally and solve their own struggles regarding this. So basically today, the format of the talk will be a 45-minute chat where we're going to cover the practice of user research in the financial sector and how is it a bit different from the more traditional user research in different industries, but also how Credit Suisse have structured their user research internally. So these are two parts, and after we have 15 minutes questions. So on the interface of Zoom, you have the Q&A on the right side, where you can go there and ask questions. And I will ask question early so people can upvote. I will start by the most upvoted questions, and then we go on. So yeah, feel free to ask questions. We'll be very happy to answer them. Dom is super excited to share with you his insights. And we are super happy for you to be here. Well, we have 1 minute, okay. So I think we can start lightly and we go on to the topics. So Dom, again, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And so let's start. You're a senior user researcher at Credit Suisse. Can you tell us a bit more about you and the responsibilities you have at Credit Suisse these days?
Yeah. So obviously, my background is in psychology and e-business, so I've got a master's degree. I've been in the field of sort of UX and research for a number of years now, and I started at Credit Suisse about a year and a half ago. So yeah, since then we've sort of been scaling and growing, and we've been touching on a number of sort of internal and external facing tools globally across the bank. So it's been an exciting time for us. It's been very, very enjoyable.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned you were scaling user research. So how many people were doing user research when you arrived, and how many are doing user research now in this case?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of how many people are doing user research in my team's been growing since I've been there as well. It started out with 1 or 2 people, and now we're sort of up to 5 in the team, just in user research. And of course, there are also a number of UX designers, not only sort of in our sort of team, but across the bank. There's a number of design teams all working on a number of different solutions for different facing clients and internally. So we work with a number of these teams. We collaborate across all of the divisions really. In terms of our team, we want to grow and evangelize sort of the user and user research across these teams.
Okay, cool. And when obviously you have different teams and all regards, and how is the research divided between all these teams? Is it primarily user research doing research, or are the responsibilities for research kind of shared in all these different teams somehow?
So it depends very much on the team. So there are some teams who do their own research, and there are other teams who obviously need help or need sort of education in a way in research and the processes, and obviously that's where we come in. We do a lot of the research for a number of these teams, but we also take a consultative role as well. We can also educate, and we can sort of expand our reach in that way, because at the end of the day, it is about getting research and done in the company and getting people aware of what we do. So we kind of try and have the best of both worlds in terms of trying to democratize research as much as possible, but making sure that we have, you know, a view on what's going on and make sure that it's done in a correct way.
Okay, interesting, cool. Yeah, that's something I'll dive a bit deeper in the second part.
Yeah.
But it's always interesting to have like the broader context, so how you operate and how you guys, you know, position yourself within the structure. But to start off, I would love you to, you know, walk us through how, you know, research is performed at Credit Suisse, on which kind of methodologies are you mainly, you know, doing usability research, or is it, you know, a bit broader, like the more user research part of it? I would love us to you to give us a hint on how you guys operate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, it's probably similar in most companies. Most of the research that we do, most of the methodologies that we do is centered around user testing, usability testing, you know, followed by sort of surveys and generative research, so sort of deep dive interviews, exploratory research on a number of different clients that we have, and obviously internal and external, because we also work with the employees. But also, yeah, I mean, across a number of different client types. So yeah, I mean, the reason we've also focused a little bit more in this initial period of getting started is on usability studies, is because, you know, we started with building this UX lab, and, you know, that obviously draws in a lot of interest, and it has some kind of tangibility to it. It's so you can see and touch it and see the exciting tools that we have and some of the exciting things that we do. So obviously that's the initial interest, and, you know, we get a lot of people coming to us and wanting to test their tools and their apps and websites, etc. And that way we can sort of get them understanding what it is that we do, and we can expand and show the value of generative research and you know, ethnographic research, whether it's diary studies, etc. We can then demonstrate a wider range of what we do.
Okay. No, that's super interesting, because you have such a broad kind of methodology of research, which sometimes, you know, we speak to user research teams and they're like super tactical focused, versus like what I see, you have also this very ethnographic diary studies. And that's actually something we're going to cover in this first part, like, you know, because I think the financial sector is, especially, I mean, banking, you have like a lot of different personas, but more or less sensitives. And so like the big tricks are like, how do you organize for all this, like, you know, let's say more general profiles like B2C, or like, let's say higher end profiles, which are a bit, you know, more sensitive. And I'll dive into a second into this. But I think, you know, when you talk a lot about showing what you do and advocating, you have like this kind of I would say pressure maybe at Credit Suisse, or to show like there is a ROI behind every action of research, or is it more like something that the organization like is more secure, that they know like there's a big impact, but you don't have like to measure in a DP and in the small ones?
So, I mean, it depends on the team that we're working with.
Okay.
You have a number of teams that we work with who are sort of very digital focused and very user focused. We have some great product managers and people in design who you don't necessarily need to demonstrate the value of it to. Having said that, there are, you know, in the finance sector in general, and I mean in large corporations in general, there are a lot of people who are very numbers focused, and, you know, demonstrating the ROI in an e-commerce setting is a lot easier than doing it in a sector which a lot of the tools aren't focused around bringing in revenue, and you know, there are you know, tools that educate and you know, just help internal employees, etc. But there are people who are very focused on numbers. In that way, we do need to kind of demonstrate a return on investment in some way, and we do that by sort of development hours and sort of industry standards statistics on the ROI of UX. But yeah, people certainly in finance can be hung up on numbers because it's their life, right? You know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess you need to adapt a bit to also the culture, like how people.
Exactly. I mean, you know, what we do is understanding who we're talking to. So, and it counts for us in our team when we're working with the project teams as well. So we try and sort of tailor our message a bit.
Okay, no, cool. And part of the, like, I mean, from all the research methodologies you've been using at Credit Suisse, is there any particular one that brings the most impact on your opinion?
So in terms of
impact, like on like methodologies you've been using, is there one that is the most impactful to?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say, you know, with the implementation of our lab, having stakeholders coming in and being able to see what we do and, you know, watching the eye movements of the participants, if that's that, or seeing the, you know, emotional analysis of the tools that we have, it can be quite impactful. You know, it does show that we know what we're doing. They can see the users interacting with their prototype or their tool or whatever it is, and they can actually see the problems themselves. And we get them involved, and we have, you know, give them post-its and, you know, get them to stick them up on the wall. And at the end of the day, we sort of manage that those insights, and we structure them and we summarize them, and then obviously we create our report. But getting the stakeholders in the lab, getting them involved, letting them see that, you know, the issues themselves is a hugely impactful thing for us, and a hugely impactful thing for them. And, you know, they get very excited about it and discussing iterations, and, you know, you need to pull it back in sometimes so they get overexcited. And you need to, you know, sort of manage the situation, but it's a hugely impactful thing for the team and for us.
Yeah, I mean, when you have so much like demand, it shows you have done something right, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
we're cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you're saying. It's something shared across many research teams. Like when you have the luxury of having the research labs, and I mean, since you kind of dived into the usability lab topic, I was kind of keeping this question for a bit after, but I was curious to hear. Okay, obviously now everything has gone a bit remote. So how do you keep the impact even when you're remote, or like, I mean, I guess now you're at home, so it's like, how do you, you know, like, have you seen a difference in terms of stakeholder excitement before and after COVID, or how did you manage this transition?
I mean, it's just it has been, you know, obviously a challenge with that, because we, you know, we sometimes are reliant on, you know, stakeholders being there at the time. It just means that where our focus has to shift a little bit. So, you know, whilst we have the stakeholder engagement in, you know, in the room when we're actually at the office, now we do it sort of more in the workshops following. So we get them more engaged in some of the insights, and we kind of run them through the prototype along with the insights, and so they can sort of experience it as they're going through. So yeah, we have to prepare a lot more for these workshops, because, you know, very often before it was, you know, they were there, so it was a lot of summarizing, showing them more details, walking through some of the recommendations, of which a lot of them they probably already, you know, were aware of, and the findings they were aware of. And now we're structuring it in a way that is more engaging, gets them sort of more involved, and yeah, it means that we have to prepare a little bit more, because also we're using remote tools, so you can draw up on a whiteboard or put some post-its up or anything. So it's it can be challenging, but as long as you're prepared and you have things that you can share with them at the time, it's working quite well.
Okay. No, yeah, I think it's very interesting, because we've been talking to many. I mean, you know, the whole research world has been going remote.
Yeah.
And a handful of researchers have been sharing this kind of this approach that, remote research is still working, but it's so much more time in preparation and alignments and making sure that tiny details kind of, you know, doesn't get not understood from the other side.
Yeah.
Which in a room, it's like, you know, crystal clear, like you're observing the people, like you're all sharing kind of the same space. And it's kind of seamless.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, the fundamentals remain the same, you know. So you know, the types of outcomes that we want and the way that we design the studies. I mean, none of that has changed. You know, we still have the same sort of strict measures in how we develop these studies. It's just an additional barrier, but the fundamentals remain the same.
Okay. No, cool. And is this going to have maybe a deeper impact in terms of roadmap, like research roadmaps, or?
I think that, I mean, for us, not so much. I mean, it has for the project teams. You know, things have been pushed a little bit more and pushed further down the line, and the expectation that things are going to get a little bit better. Obviously, you know, things are getting a bit better, but not as quickly as we'd hoped. Which means that we're just making more adjustments to our processes, and we're getting these things pushed through anyway. So in terms of roadmaps, no, things are speeding up again, and we're sticking to the same sort of timelines.
Okay, nice. And to talk about specifically the financial sector when you execute research, is there a particular challenge that you're facing when doing this kind of research on that sector, or that surprised you maybe?
Yeah, I mean, in the finance sector, there's such a diverse group of people. I mean, everyone is in some way related to finance. And I mean, whether they're sort of, you know, using banks just for their income, or they're borrowing, or they're saving, or they're investing, or they're paying, or, you know, insurance or mortgages or whatever. Everyone is in some way related to this. And you know, everyone at some sort of functional level, what they're actually doing. And then on top of that, you've got sort of the cognitive level, you know, how much financial literacy, I mean, how much they know about finance when they're going into this. It's a hugely diverse range of people, with sometimes going in with the same problems, with the same needs on a functional level. And then you have sort of, you know, on top of that, an emotional level. Everyone's, especially in this context now that we're in, you know, there's everything that we knew about our users before is kind of contextually invalid. You know, there's a lot more fear and anxiety around people's finances these days, you know, with COVID and people certainly, a number of countries having sort of job insecurity. And then so on that emotional level, you've got a huge range of people experiencing different things on an emotional level, and understanding each of these and the stories behind these needs can be quite challenging, because at the end of the day, it's our job to build solutions to these needs and to make recommendations for how we build these solutions. So it can be quite challenging, but it's also incredibly interesting. And it means that we do have to dive right back to the fundamentals and understand the context which we're in now, sort of our environment now, which is largely different to last year.
No, I think that's super exciting, because I mean, the first question that pops to mind is like, how do you manage this like research complexity between, you know, all these like different personas, but also on each level of, you know, emotions as well. Like, do you have like a special research structure for this?
I mean, certainly we found jobs to be done incredibly helpful in this. It sort of breaks down these elements into those sort of components. You know, you have the functional level, and you have the cognitive level, and you have the emotional level. And you know, when defining different personas or different you know, users and what they need, found that's certainly very, very helpful. And you sort of integrate into other things as well, and you build your own sort of frameworks that encompass what you need from a finance perspective or whatever it is.
Okay. No, I totally agree. The jobs to be done framework is like so useful. It kind of reduces so much the complexity of you know, all these different levels.
Yeah, exactly. It just breaks it down, and it's a good way for, you know, certainly with the stakeholders or people that you're working with, to sort of see see it on that level and broken down, it's usually quite an illuminating experience. Very often it's not thought of in that sort of structure. So it's a really helpful tool for us.
Yeah, they're cool. Was it something like the team kind of used already, like when you entered, or you also brought it at some level?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just things that we brought in from our experience. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility, and there's a lot of, I mean, on some levels, there's a lot of flexibility in what we can do. On other levels, it's quite restrictive because it is the finance sector. Certainly in terms of the way we work and our processes, it can be quite flexible. And we're given a lot of sort of autonomy to run with it, because it is, in this field, it can be an educational thing as well. So you're also presenting these things.
No, cool. And when you come to, let's say, testing maybe more prototypes, like how do you prepare? Like, I mean, I've been doing UX work before, and when we were testing bank UI, it was a bit always the struggle of what kind of data do we put here? Can we play with the real account or not? I mean, there's a lot of legal restrictions, user fears regarding all these topics. Like, how do you do it basically?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably our biggest restriction is client identifying data. We have to be super careful with that. I mean, data security and privacy is legal's top priority. So we have a very close relationship with legal. We have to, because we are working with clients. So it's always clients. Even if we're working with internal people, that's still clients.
Oh wow, okay.
And because everyone's a client internally. So we do work very, very closely with legal, and we have to understand a lot of the legal constraints and the restrictions, and we try and keep them in the loop as well with what we're doing, so they can sort of also understand what we're doing and how we're doing it. But no, when we're bringing in people and prototypes, for one, regulations, we don't use any of their data. Two, even if we could, we probably wouldn't, because people are also protective of their own banking or finances. I mean, I don't even like people looking over my shoulder when I'm in my banking app. And a lot of it, they even within apps now, they have high demand, because if you're looking at it on the train, you don't want people seeing that sort of information. So no, we use a lot of dummy data for that. It makes it sort of slightly more comfortable for them. It helps us in our sort of legal restrictions. Because I mean, having a realistic prototype is one thing, and getting them into that mindset is one thing. We find it's not too much of a problem using dummy data. Actually, sometimes if the dummy data doesn't make sense, that's found to be a problem. So using dummy data and the numbers don't add up, that's always something you're going to hear.
So true.
And so that's important. But no, in terms of realism, people get into it pretty quickly. The most important thing is making sure they're comfortable, and that's something that we do quite a lot. We put a lot of effort into making sure that they feel like they're in a normal setting, a natural setting, not surrounded by a load of bankers and who are just investigating them. So I found that to be more important.
Okay, no, cool. And how do you did you make the process to talk to your own clients? Because I speak to a lot of researchers, and usually they want to test their own clients, but it's super hard because you have legal restrictions, you have you don't have the connection to the data, or GDPR, it's impossible. You cannot incentivize your own clients or these kind of things. So what were the solutions you found as a team to kind of overhaul that?
This is somewhere you're going to be a bit happy. Is TestingTime is very good for that. Anonymizing data, making sure we only have sort of access to limited amounts of data that we on the participants. So in terms of a client identifying data perspective, there's none of those issues, and we ensure that they don't give us any data that could identify themselves as a client or anything like that, and that's super important. So we found TestingTime to be really helpful for that. So I mean, you know, there are some cases where we will need to recruit for people and outside of testing times, you know, like ultra high net worth. And
Yeah.
in these cases, we can attend events, and it's the same thing. We just have to make sure that there's nothing that can sort of identify clients.
Okay. And how I mean, what was the biggest you know, decision criteria when you decide to outsource recruitment? Because I know it's a lot of, like, you know, talks within teams, like, oh, do we outsource, do we don't outsource, because people are like sometimes fearing quality, or like they lose control out of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you walk us through a bit, like, the decision process, or why it has been something more beneficial than not?
Yeah, well, I mean, for us, it was a number of things. It was just taking a lot of weight off our shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Recruiting is an incredibly intensive activity, time intensive, you know, resource intensive, and yeah, I mean, when you're recruiting yourself, perhaps you'll get people who are slightly better quality. You know, perhaps not. It depends on how you do it, what access you have to, you know, to people or not. We don't really have that access to clients
Mm-hmm.
for legal reasons. Yeah, I mean, you can work alongside the relationship managers, who we also have a close relationship with, as the clue is in the title. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
for us, it was just taking weight off our shoulders. Speed was another thing. I mean, the turnaround is just awesome. You know, we do get people very, very quickly, and we have found, you know, from knowing obviously TestingTime before, and you know, from other people, that the quality is good. So yeah, I mean, it was quite an easy decision for us, actually.
Okay, no, good to hear. And I think like the last questions I have regarding this topic on the financial sector is a lot about to do with the high net worth
Yeah.
individual, because this is always like the most challenging for researchers. Like, how do you approach them? How, like, first, how do you get to them? And then the second thing is, like, how do you perform somehow the research with them, or
Yeah.
like, you know, be in a level that you know, they cannot trust you to share their problem, because it's, you know, we are like somehow day-to-day people, I would say,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're like in a different world. So like I've talked to many researchers about these kind of things, but it's always fascinating to hear about, like, how do you deal with that, and, you know, get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we work closely with relationship managers who work with these clients. People often talk about, you know, finding it difficult to get people to participate, and, you know, whether they want to share their opinion. I've always found that people are actually quite keen to share what they can, and improve the solutions.
Yeah.
So it's something that I've noticed that people, you know, phrase it in the right way, people are quite happy to participate. You know, with the ultra high net worth, yeah, you're only going to get like 10-15 minutes of their time. So you really need to make sure that you've got exactly what you need in those 10 to 15 minutes. And whether we go to sort of events where they'll be, or, you know, whether they're happen to be at the bank, or we managed to find time, even if it's a limited amount of time, to talk to these people, because it's incredibly helpful, because they're the kind of people you can't really put your own mind to. You can't really think in their perspective. I mean, I wish I could. I wish I was in that position myself, but I'm not. And so yeah, it's really important to understand their needs from their perspective, which is a very unique perspective.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what do you think is the best somehow messaging that worked, like, you know, to approach them? Do you present yourself as a researcher from the bank? Do you come from,
I very often won't do it myself. For people like that, it's to get sort of access. It has to go through. It has to go through someone else. You can't just reach out to someone like that. So it does have to go through a couple of people. It depends on the people you speak to in the bank.
Yeah. I guess some people are more open, less, and other, like, less protective, if they understand somehow the trade-offs.
Yeah, And there are
benefit.
also, I mean, yeah, there's also a number of restrictions in that sense. I mean, you know, also we still can't really identify the clients in that sense. There are a number of barriers that sort of we have to respect, and so it does restrict us in a number of ways. Yeah, so from our perspective, it's kind of a late, like sort of deep, like ducking and diving over laser beams and making sure that we don't touch any of them while we're talking to these individuals.
Yeah. Okay. No, cool, interesting, awesome. Yeah, it was a bit part one about the whole financial sector. Now it's more about like the whole structure and operations at Credit Suisse, like regarding user research. And you mentioned like a lot of interesting, exciting things you guys are doing. Like you have a usability lab. You mentioned you do eye tracking or sentiment analysis. So yeah, let's just dive in a bit about like your research stack somehow.
Yeah.
Like what you guys have available, what kind of tools you have, and yeah, chit chat a bit on this topic to see how helpful it has been and how it changed a bit your game maybe for you.
Yeah, I mean, the lab's been incredibly helpful for us.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, just in terms of also an educational side, and you know, getting interest in this field. It's been having something tangible that people can actually walk into and see.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's the eye tracking, which is, you know, always cool to see, or the emotion recognition or anything like that, it's an interesting tool that we can like add to. It's supposed to be complementary to the qualitative data. We don't tend to use these tools on their own. For the main reason is you just need way more participants. You need sort of around sort of 30 to 40 participants for just using it by itself.
Wow, in qualitative, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to use it quantitatively, you'd have to have way more participants. If you want also asking questions and getting, you know, feedback on that level. So I mean, we do use it as complementary tools to the qualitative data. We do use quantitative data in terms of the surveys that we send out, in terms of what we can use in terms of tools, specific user research tools. We are also constrained on that side, because a lot of it is, you know, data protection and privacy. So, you know, we do have to be a bit more sort of creative with how we manage our tools, and sometimes we have to create tools ourselves. And which is always interesting. But essentially, you know, as I say, the fundamentals stay the same. If you know the study design and you know exactly what you need to do, the tools you can develop yourself, or you can do them on a much sort of more lower scale. These fancy tools that are available in the market now.
What is the tool you created, guys? Like
I can't really talk.
No, you can't. Okay, no worries.
We're looking also into sort of centralizing intelligence, so we can make sure we have all of our findings available.
Like a repository.
To other teams. You know, because one of the things that we need to do is align across a number of teams. And there are a number of teams that are doing some similar thing or have some similar problems, and it's good for us to be able to sort of share the insights that we have.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, that was actually one of my key questions, because I see, I mean, especially you have like a growing team, scaling team, you have you're managing research globally. I mean, with thousands of, even millions of clients. So the key question always in this kind of settings is like, how do you avoid duplication of research? Because that's probably like the two biggest bottlenecks we see across the board. Like every client is like, you have bottlenecks on one side, and then on the other side is like, we have the knowledge, but it's not distributed, and people don't know who did what and when. And so we redo these things without the proper calendar of these kind of things. And it's like, just a waste of money when you look at how much research costs, or like, you know, all the team involvement in it. So like, what is your secret sauce somehow to manage all that complexity?
It's incredibly complex. A lot of what we do is simply, you know, broadcasting a little bit of what we do and kind of sometimes the projects that we're working on. But to be honest, we as a team, we touch on so many different tools and services within Credit Suisse, and that we find ourselves also connecting teams and saying, we're working on similar problems here, it'd be interesting to align on this. And then, you know, something that we're also trying to do is basically, create this a centralized level of intelligence that can be shared and distributed and people can access. So yeah, it's really complex, and we're sort of just, you know, starting out figuring out how to solve this problem. Because there's a huge number of tools and services available.
I mean, don't worry. I mean, it's like I haven't seen really so many teams like finding the right you know, fit, or even like this system like Polaris that we work at the time. You know, I mean, you always have some pitfalls or not when you're doing this, so it's a bit tricky, and I know it's a big topic for anybody having this kind of context position.
Yeah. I mean, I know, you know, there are a number of companies that do this, you know, create these research repositories, and you can get these sort of off the shelf, and you can create sort of general universal tags, ones that are going to apply across a number of projects. You get sort of individual project specific tags, and you know, you can sort of consolidate and amalgamate a number of these findings just through one of these sort of tools that you can get. Dovetail as one. So there are a number of things that you can do, and you know, we're looking at how we can do that ourselves.
Okay. No, I get it. And when you were saying like about distributing the research, like how do you have somehow like a playbook, how, like, you know, how the research team in Credit Suisse like distribute the research, what kind of format like somehow works best? Like I have some discussion with Dr. Nick back here like a few months ago, and it was like, me as a user researcher, I don't write any report, never again, because nobody reads them. And so I was like curious to hear about like how you guys like have learned to distribute in such complex company, I would say.
I mean, for us, I mean, reports are really important. I mean, we do understand that you know, a lot of people don't read detailed reports with, you know, super complex findings, and it's all about the structure. It's in the same way that we do it for users, we need to do it for the teams that we're working with. We need to understand what their needs are from this, as well as what our needs are. So our needs are making sure that these insights, when they're read, they're aligned across everyone. Everyone get the same understanding from these reports as someone completely new who's just reading it. Everyone will have the same understanding of it. That's the most important thing for us. Making sure that, you know, everything is there and it's clear. So you can bring stakeholders into the room, and you can get them to write post-its, and you can summarize at the end of the day, and then they can go off and start working on it. But without the reports, they're not going to get the same level of detail. They're going to misinterpret a lot of what was done that day. As soon as they leave the room, their memory is going to start to decay, and they're going to start putting their own confirmation bias and their own ideas and views on it. Having a structured report that's very clear is super important. But then you've got to think about their needs as well. And their needs are, okay, so someone from management's going to read this, and they don't want to read this super detailed report. They want a summary. So you've got to have the executive summary. Then, you know, they want to have, ideally, if you're working with designers or developers or, you know, a team like that, they're going to want to have something that's, what do I need to do and how do I need to do it? And very often that's just a list of the findings and the recommendations. And very often, if they don't want it in a structured, nice report, you can deliver it in Excel or something like that. But the most important thing is understanding their needs and aligning it with what our needs are. So there are a number of ways that you can structure a report. You can do it simply, you can do it detailed, but I think reports are super important. How you present that is, again, dependent on the company. You know, you're going to have corporations and sort of in finance, they're going to like PowerPoint very much. Start working with teams quite a lot. You can start expanding that. You know, there are some, you know, some companies and some teams that will like a sort of, yeah, like a mini museum of findings and recommendations and posters or cool things or videos or clips or whatever it is. So it very much depends on who you're writing it for. But
Yeah,
I do think that the reports are important for sure.
Okay. So you basically have, let's say, a central structure of the report, and then you kind of do you, like, to paraphrase it, do you kind of adapt some part of the report to each kind of stakeholders, basically?
Yeah. I mean, we won't do multiple reports for team. We'll do one report, and that will be focused on sort of their needs, and that will be summary at the start, and then how we structure the report is based on sort of a group need rather than individual needs. But yeah, for different teams we could do different things.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I mean, what I've seen in research is like the research is like 50% of the job.
Yeah.
The other part of, like, you know, the research is like how you sell it and how, you know, advocate for it internally.
Yeah.
So people get this general understanding, as you said. It's like, I think the super clear.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, cool. And how to say, one questions I had, you know, regarding the tooling you were mentioning about especially the sentiment of the eye tracking thing.
Oh yeah.
It's like how, I mean, I've talked to a number of researchers, and many of them have been saying it's a bit of fad, because it's like it has a lot of overwork to, you know, get these tools running, you know, do the analysis, etc. But on the other hand, I have other people that also loves them. So I would like to feel in which side are you, and, you know, why in that case maybe it's helpful at Credit Suisse and in your research.
Yeah, I mean, what it does is they provide sort of supplementary data, supplementary evidence. It's great having, you know, teams in the room, and they can also see where the problems are. You can show them where they're looking, and if they're, you know, one of your hypotheses, they're not going to see this button or this piece of content that you want them to see, and you can actually see it in real time. And yeah, if you're using heat maps, you're going to need more participants. If you're using just clips of their gaze, their gaze movements, that you can do on a qualitative level, and you can actually show, okay, here are clips of you know, several participants experiencing problems with this. You're losing their attention here, and I mean, I found that can be helpful. It completely depends on how you use it. If you use it in the sense of, right, we're going to set it up, we're going to calibrate it, and then we're just going to let it run, and we're going to have nothing attached to it. We're going to have no hypotheses attached to certain areas, certain trigger points, anything like that. Then your course can be left with a huge amount of data you don't know what to do with. But if you have, like, right, okay, we have a certain hypothesis for this page. And in this instance, eye tracking is going to be super helpful, because we need to see if they notice this. Yes, you're going to get that from the qualitative feedback as well, but that immediate instinctive subconscious reaction, maybe if you, in the first few seconds of the page, where very often you'll just lose someone, they might get it later and tell you later, but that initial immediate reaction, whether it's on an emotional level or whether it's on a sort of eye movement level, that's where we found the benefit. So yeah, it's a supplementary thing, but it can be, depending on how it's used, it can be very useful.
Okay. No, cool. I think it's super useful.
Yeah, we're in the industry where, like, I mean, you know, obviously with my background in psychology, we've used eye tracking and this sort of thing before. And in that case, you're using it on a much more detailed level, and you are using it on more of a concept level, and you can dive into, you know, super detailed views on eye tracking alone. You know, it can measure the diameter of the pupil of the eye, and you can then see, okay, what is the cognitive load here? You know, because the increase of the diameter of the pupil indicates thinking harder. If you want to dive into that level, you can, but in our industry, it's too much. You don't need that.
Okay. So do you measure, like, the cognitive load of like your interface across a journey? So, for example, or is it
No, I mean
very specific?
we don't use that data because it's, I mean, one, the qualitative feedback is, it should be more than
Enough.
looking for these big problems, you know.
Yeah.
And we're not looking sort of into that level of detail. When I was studying psychology, yes, but when we're doing user research, it's just not necessary.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, it could be useful, but probably you need like much more human power as well.
Yeah.
Okay. No, cool. It like so interesting. I think, I mean, we almost had 45, but I'm not going to keep the audience waiting. We have like a few questions, so I'll just get to it. Okay. So we have the first question from Corina. Oh wait, it just changed it. Somebody like popped up, but I'll start with Corina. She was interested to know the practice, the metrics you use to define the success, the progress, and improvement in your practice.
Okay, so I mean, the thing is, we do work on a number of different tools and a number of different services, and so it is difficult to say one level of metrics because we have such a variety. And these kind of metrics are very much spoken about with the project teams themselves and the product managers in those teams. They tend to sort of define those, and we sort of understand the use, how that fits into the user need.
Yeah, maybe it's too project detail, I would say. But maybe maybe we should take into consideration how would you, let's say you have somehow a new project, and how would you, as a user researcher, construct, this success metrics, or like, go with the teams to define these metrics and show what success, progress, or improvement based on, the whole experience, or maybe previous research and these kind of things.
Yeah. I mean, sort of on a sort of more general level, the way that, that these metrics are defined is you want to understand what the end sort of desired outcome is. What is it that we want our users to be doing? What do we want them to achieve? And then from there, that's what we discuss with product managers. And there you sort of identify, okay, what are the pains and what are the problems that they're finding when trying to achieve this? What opportunities are there to solve these problems to help them achieve this desired outcome? And then from there, we have sort of solutions that can solve these problems, and a number of different ones that we can select from. And then from there, we sort of experiment on each of those solutions. And then we look at what the end result is on that design.
How long more or less works on the experiment? Is it kind of a standardized approach of experiments, or is it
it can be a huge range of methodologies from a quantitative level, where we either, or from an analytical level, if it's something that's already been built, then we can also look at server logs and things like that. But we can also look if it's something that hasn't even been built yet, and on a conceptual level, we can use that to define our generative research and how we go about that, and what it is that we're actually looking to find.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I hope it helps you, Corina. And now the first question from Anonymous is about what is the best methodology and setup to register the KPIs, so a lot of KPIs today, in a lab setting of a beta product. So basically, how do you how you're gonna measure, I would say, the task success rate, I would say, on the prototype or something. Of course, with 5 users, and maybe any app you use for this kind of testing.
So what are the KPIs within testing of a product?
Yeah, of a beta product. I mean, to set up, to register as well. I would say, I guess you could have like the apps that track automatically this like task success, or
there's that. Yeah, there's your own. You set up your own metrics, whether it's time to solve, or task success or completion, or I mean, there are a number of metrics that you can use. I mean, and then on top of that, if you want to add a sort of level of quantitative value, you can also use the system usability scale at the end, and you can develop a score on that based on number of questions, and then you can calculate and compare it to perhaps a previous development of that prototype or the next one. It sets basically just sets a benchmark for you. You can also do that.
Okay. Is it like, I mean, as a user research team, have you like somehow, because you mentioned you were using a lot of benchmarks internally. Is it something like you kind of track in between like prototypes, or when you launch a new feature or these kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, we do try and track as much as possible, just to track our own development. But I mean, a lot of it you'll also just see instinctively. You know, when you're going through and you've tested the low fidelity and then sort of more higher fidelity and go to the next test, you'll see just the number of problems and pains coming out of it just decreasing or increasing, in which case you've done something really wrong. But I mean, the aim of it is to slowly see that number decreasing, and the magnitude of the problems decreasing. So there are some problems that will just make a use of. We make it very clear to our participants that they can stop using the prototype at any point they want. They don't have to continue.
Yep.
If they feel like, right, okay, this is where I normally would have just left.
Yep.
We say, right, we want you to tell us that because it's important for us to know. Because if you don't say that, they will just continue using it just to please you. So yeah, you will see a fewer number of things like that happening.
Okay. No, that's cool. I like this like forcing the user to like, if you want to stop, just walk out and that's it. Everything is fine.
Yeah.
Else, people have the tendency of like forcing and saying like, trying to please you, and
exactly.
It's like,
we will get them back in and do a different flow with them, but we want to get a full hour's worth. but yeah, it's but we want them to tell us at least that this is the point where they would just stop using.
No, very true. Cool. Like a lot of more questions have been popping up like in the last 2-3 minutes. I have this interesting one, which is on top. It's like, what are some of your more successful collaboration with stakeholders, and any specific methodology that had brought let's say this impact? I would say.
Yeah, I think all the testing that we do in the lab, the usability testing that we do in the lab, has always been incredibly successful for us. As I said, like if they are able to see what we're doing and they can see the problems coming out themselves and the volume of problems coming out, we always ensure that the team is aware that it's not unusual to have a number of problems coming out. But there are, when you go through these testing sessions, there will be a number of problems you just don't expect. I mean, there will be a number that you do expect, of course, but there will also be that unexpected level, and that is the time where you very often see the teams getting quite excited, like, I'll get to solve this problem. I didn't even know that this problem existed, and they want to run it again. And you'll go from meeting a new team that doesn't have that much experience with user research, who just want their thing validated. You'll go from that to a team at the end of the session saying, oh Christ, actually, let's run this through a few more times and let's make some more iterations on it before we go any further with it. And it's great to see, and it's really those, when they can actually sit in and watch the user testing, that's always the most successful.
Like, do you brief like teams differently? If there have been like, it's like the first usability session, or some are it's already like run a few.
You see a difference. I mean, people just get really into. I mean, when they first get in, they're not expecting to be involved. They're not expecting to be part of the testing session, be engaged and writing post-its themselves and identifying different areas themselves. And they expect to just sit and watch and let us tell them exactly what's going on. And on some level, we need to manage it on that level. But there are also sort of levels that, you know, from a business perspective or from a technical perspective, we've got people in there who can, you know, basically let us know about some of the constraints that they have and any reasons that they have for building certain things, and it helps us develop better recommendations. But they can also see other things that maybe we haven't spotted, or they'll know we expected this to be a problem. This is why we expected it to be a problem. But once they've been attended a few sessions, they sit down, they get their post-its out. You don't need to tell them anything. They get really into it, and they're just scribbling for the full thing. So yeah, there is an evolution on it, and again, it's really nice to see, and people become a lot more receptive to your insights and what you're saying. You know, once they've experienced it a few times, there's less basically conflict with some of the findings. You know, start accepting it a lot more, and they start understanding what point of view we're coming from, and that it's an objective point of view.
Yeah, less ego into like the product versus like, okay, understand it's the users, like something is wrong and we just need to solve the problem. Versus, it's my thing, and I don't want to change anything. I don't.
It happens really quickly. I mean, it's all about the environment, the stage that you set. You need to make that very clear from the start that that's what it is. And you know, you set that kind of environment and you stick to it, and in your mannerisms and everything, it happens incredibly quickly.
Yeah, I think that's when you have the luxury to have a usability lab, it's like I would say a very political weapon.
I mean, it's just a great way to demonstrate on a more tangible level what we do.
No, cool. And then we have a last question from Corina. That is like, do you run any workshops within the organization to educate and talk about the value of research? Like, monthly show, it's a good question. Show and tell, or another form of engagement with other departments or senior management. Do you have like a frequency for this kind of, advocating the research internally?
I mean, it's something we're doing certainly a lot more. We've got a little bit more time to sort of advocate it. You know, when we started up, what it was simply taking on as many projects as we could, just to demonstrate it in sort of reality. Okay, this is what we do, and this is the value of it. But now we are taking part in more workshops for different events that are happening within the company. Newsletters we're getting involved in, and it's a whole process in itself, and it can take a while, and it's definitely an initiative you just have to do on top of what your core job, which is research. So it's an initiative that you have to really emphasize yourselves, and we are starting to do that more and more.
Okay, cool. I mean, in other organizations which are, let's say, much more voluminous in terms of research, or like people doing research, for Corina, what we've seen is like, it's called all the research ops, basically, where it's like when the research reach a point where it's like too much research going on, like the researcher, they can't do this extra legwork, which is like disseminating the research, talking to the people, matching them up, or sharing all this legwork, which is a lot of work. When when you're on your side, you as a researcher, you still need to do like the alignment with stakeholder, preparing the prototypes, like the script screening, and all this, like the thing. So
I mean, we sort of distribute that in the team, but I can certainly see how it could be an entirely separate role itself, because it's quite a lot to do, and it could easily be a full-time role in a team our size.
No, definitely. No, cool. No, it was our last questions. Thank you, Dom, and thank you everybody for attending. Super lovely to have you here.
Thanks very much. It's been great. Really enjoyed it.
No, definitely, and I hope the audience, like, you enjoyed it. The recording will be live on YouTube, right? YouTube, and also on our page where you can access it. So feel free to share it. Like if you found this webinar interesting, We'll have a new one in September. Details to be announced. But yeah, Dom, it was a pleasure to have you here.
Absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, I wish you a great day, and see you around for some research.
Absolutely. All right. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.